We're pleased now to be joined by longtime Detroit journalist and reporter, as well as candidate for City Council in the City of Detroit, ML Elrick, with us now in the Oakland County Megacast. ML, thank you for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate having you on. We've had you on recently to speak about your candidacy for Detroit City Council. Let's start off with some big news also downtown in the city of Detroit regarding another political candidacy, as former Detroit Chief of Police James Craig recently announced that he will be running for governor as a Republican. Your thoughts on the former police chief's potential run for governor of Michigan?
Well, I think he's going to be a very popular candidate in the GOP. I know people who have contacted me who have said, "What do you think of him? We're excited about him being a candidate for governor." There were some people who thought he might someday be a candidate for mayor, but I guess he set his sights a little higher. But he is someone who is very skilled at interacting with the media. He is very good at connecting with people. He's sort of a no-nonsense guy, someone who gets things done. But he's never been a politician before. And as someone who had never been a politician until earlier this year can attest, it's a whole different ballgame. There is really nothing that can prepare you for it except just jumping in. So we'll see whether he makes that transition. And we'll see, I think, who else gets in the race, because if the Republicans clear the field for him, that will help quite a bit. Mm-hmm. But it actually may help him to have a contested primary so that if he is the nominee, he'll be prepared to take on Governor Whitmer, who is a very effective campaigner, a very experienced politician, and someone that a rookie does not want to mess with.
And also has an absolute war chest of campaign finances so far. I mean, just this week, reports came out about just the large extent of her campaign finance just so far before she's even really started to go on the campaign trail and formally campaign for her potential re-election as governor. So and just continuing on, one more question with James Craig as he prepares to run for the governor of the state of Michigan. Obviously, it would be a huge win if he were to be not only nominated by the Republican Party, but then to potentially eventually win the governorship. Would be a huge win for the Republican Party that definitely took a hit in the state of Michigan and in the city of Detroit in recent elections. And so prior to the 2020 election, of course, at the time, President Donald Trump had granted clemency to Kwame Kilpatrick, who was, of course, former mayor of Detroit and a controversial mayor of Detroit. And do you think that with his relationship with President Donald Trump's influence on the Republican Party, and Kwame Kilpatrick's influence, of course, in the city of Detroit throughout his life and his career, that Kwame may be an important part of James Craig's run for governor?
I suspect that Mr. Kilpatrick will focus on his new marriage and his new career. Mm-hmm. And stay out of politics, but I wouldn't presume to know what he's going to do. I used to hold him in very high regard and almost went to work for him. And if I'd known what was really going on, I wouldn't have considered either of those things. So I'm not one who knows what's in Mr. Kilpatrick's mind. But I think he's set his sights on other matters. It is worth noting that in 2020, Donald Trump received 5,000 more votes in Detroit than he did in 2016. So there are people in Detroit who are more open to a Republican than people may believe. But 5,000 more votes out of Detroit is not going to be enough to put James Craig in the governor's mansion. And quite frankly, I think we have a governor who's done a good job. I think we have a governor who has led us through an unprecedented health crisis in a way that other states wish they had that kind of leadership. So I think as the chief gets out there and starts talking to people, he's going to find out that this is not going to be a cakewalk, and that if he thinks he's just going to, make some rounds and shake some hands and then relocate to Lansing, he's got a whole nother thing coming.
We're joined by ML Elrick now on the Oakland County Megacast. He is a longtime Detroit journalist and a candidate now for Detroit City Council with us today on the Oakland County Megacast. And recently, a major issue that has had a severe effect on the city of Detroit has, of course, been the major weather events that we've had here in southeastern Michigan and throughout the state of Michigan with, of course, just devastating flooding downriver, certainly in the city of Detroit as well being affected. And we've had a number of other officials in the local area, including Great Lakes Water Authority CEO Sue McCormick, resigned this week as a result of these mounting issues that continue to have effect on the people of the city of Detroit and surrounding areas, not just in this current situation, but this is something that's been ongoing for a number of years. ML, your thoughts on the situation, particularly the infrastructure situation in the city of Detroit and in surrounding areas, given the fact that we continue to have these major storms that are affected, of course, by climate change, and that there doesn't seem to be a solution anywhere nearby in place that is being put there by our leadership?
Well, I feel I'm a leader in the community, and I have put forth a solution. But let me start by telling you that every day I go through the same ritual. I try and take some of the things out of my basement that were destroyed in the flood. I try and put them somewhere to dry out, or I decide what we can keep, what we can recycle, and what we can throw away. Because we got 2 to 3 feet of water in our basement, and almost everything we had in the basement was destroyed. This is unacceptable. This didn't have to happen. And the explanations we've been getting from the officials who are responsible for keeping our basements dry and our water drinkable change. And I have very little faith that we know what happened. So one of the things that I've been proposing as a solution, and I've sat in on both of the Great Lakes Water Authority Board of Directors meetings that have occurred since this flood, and I frankly have been one of the only people sitting in and speaking out. And this is a plan that we came up with in the immediacy of the flood after doing some research and talked to some experts. We think the Great Lakes Water Authority should offer every homeowner and business in the flood area, in the service area of Connor Creek Pump Station, which does not seem to be up to the task, backflow preventers, check valves, and sump pumps. We've also proposed some green alternatives because what they call gray infrastructure, which basically means breaking up the road, laying pipe, putting in pumps, putting in machines, building new facilities, is very expensive. It's very time consuming, and it is not going to be done before the next flood, because I'll tell you, my house is flooded twice in 3 weeks. So what we're proposing are things called bioswales and rain gardens, another GSI. It's basically green infrastructure. Mm-hmm. Well, what you do is you take the vacant land that we have and you reconfigure it. You redevelop it so that it is built to retain and hold water until this crisis is passed, until the water can evaporate or can be absorbed into the neighboring areas. There's a large grassy field. It's basically a natural retention pond, or at least that's what it looks like, near the new Chrysler plant here at Beneteau and Kercheval. Neighbors tell me that filled all the way to the top, so it looked like a lake. When I went by it this week, it was just a nice, clean, dry, grassy field. Nobody in that neighborhood had their basement flood. We do have green, efficient, economical, and timely solutions to this problem. We have been messing with the earth, but the earth can help us out of this problem we've created. And for people who just want to spend billions of dollars and take 10 and 20 years to fix this and then pass the cost back on to us, who are already paying for all the things that were destroyed in our basement, that's just not acceptable.
Yeah, there's going to need to be solutions beyond gray infrastructure changes or remodels or whatever the case may be in order to mitigate these issues, if nothing else in the meantime, but also to prevent these issues from coming down the line when that new gray infrastructure, should it ever be in place, ultimately comes to pass and needs to be replaced itself. We had a really interesting interview yesterday with Oakland County Water Resources Commissioner Jim Nash that you can find on our website at civiccentertv.com, and he talked extensively about some of those green infrastructure solutions that may be in place, that may be able to be used in these kinds of situations. We're joined by ML Elrick on the Oakland County Megacast, longtime Detroit journalist and candidate for City Council. He's also the host of the Soul of Detroit podcast, and ML on a recent podcast in the wake of the new allowances for college athletes to seek endorsements through name, image, and likeness rule relaxations. You announced on the podcast you'll be sponsoring MSU rower Kalina Nice. Would you like to talk about that situation, and how did that come up to a point where you and your podcast were sponsoring this athlete?
Sure. So I hate the idea of turning college students basically into hustlers. Mm-hmm. I've argued for years that college athletes are handsomely compensated, both with free tuition, with tutoring, with clothing, with travel, with specialized training, with access to special kitchens, that basically being a student athlete is a privilege and that there is adequate compensation for that. And I know that the compensation is adequate because I'm putting a couple kids through college myself who are not receiving any assistance. Mm-hmm. And believe me, it's expensive. But I have a couple of co-hosts who feel differently, so we debate this topic regularly. And once the NCAA announced that they would have the NIL, the name, image, and likeness allowance, we decided that we would pick a student to sponsor. But we didn't want to pick a high-profile athlete who's going to be able to get money and sponsorship from anywhere they like. We wanted to pick someone who was in a more obscure sport, who probably would not be one of the folks who could take advantage of this new program. And I happen to know Kalina because she is the daughter of a friend of mine who I went to college with. I got to know her over the years, trying to help her with some of her work at Lake Orion High School, where she's a very talented student journalist. And so I met with her class, and I've been in touch with her and critiqued some of her work and gotten to know her a little bit through the Michigan Scholastic Press Association. And so when we were looking for an athlete, I thought, well, here's a kid who's super smart, works really hard. She's involved in a sport that doesn't get enough exposure and deserves some exposure. And I also know she's going to be great on the podcast because she's really smart, she's really funny, and she's not going to hesitate to let loose with a couple of old guys who may just sound like, the get off my lawn types. And she was on our first show this week, which you can find at mlsoulofdetroit.com or wherever you get your podcasting. She's really funny, really strong, and held her own. And it feels like we made a great decision. And so on the air, we negotiated her compensation. I'll tell you right now, in addition to some free swag from the podcast, she's going to get $100 a month from us, and that's partly subsidized from the butchery in Sylvan Lake. And the butchery is also going to throw in some meat and groceries for Kaylee and her housemates and teammates. So it's not a Nike deal, but it's as much as we can afford, and I think it's going to make college a little more enjoyable for her and her friends. And she'll get a little experience in the media, which is where I think she's ultimately headed.
And what are your thoughts on the situation? I know, of course, that you have said you are opposed to college athletes seeking additional compensation as a result of their status as college athletes, because you believe that they are handsomely compensated with, in many cases, full ride scholarships and with name recognition, of course, for those in the more marketable athletics such as college football, college basketball, baseball, and so on and so forth. What are your thoughts on the dichotomy between a situation like Kayla's, where she's getting $100 a month from your podcast and support from the butchery in Sylvan Lake, versus other athletes such as Bryce Young, quarterback at the University of Alabama, who is yet to start a single game for the University of Alabama and is receiving as much as $1 million in endorsement deals already without ever hitting the field for the Crimson Tide?
Yeah, so my concern is not just that I feel that students are compensated. My biggest concern about this is I'm someone who plays a lot of sports. I'm on a lot of teams, and I've also been a coach for many years. The beauty of sports isn't the glory, although that's nice. It's about being part of a team. It's about doing your part. It's about supporting each other. And I think when you have a group, in the case of a college football program, 110 kids, and one of them is going to be a millionaire, and their ability to make money is based on standing out from the rest, I think for the other people on the team, that's going to cause some cohesion issues. That's going to cause some resentment. It's going to fracture that solidarity that you really need to be a successful team and to get the best lessons out of athletics. Because even these Alabama quarterbacks who become first-round draft picks, they don't all have successful careers, but the experiences they get as an athlete, as a teammate, as a friend, that's the real value, and that's what's going to carry them through life. And I think when we start putting people on a pedestal, I just think of Johnny Football, Johnny Manziel, when he was at Texas A&M, who was signing autographs for money, which at the time was illegal. You know, I know we're on the internet, but I'm not going to use the word that I would use to describe him, but it starts with an A in the last part of his whole. And I think that's he was not a good teammate. He did not end up having a good career because he chased the dollars. He let his ego take over, and I think it cost him, and I think it cost his team, and it just undermines everything we're trying to teach people about life through sports. When I have kids play for me, I tell their parents, we're going to teach kids about life through sports. We're not teaching people that sports is life. And when you monetize this, you are sending the absolute wrong message that's going to destroy college sports. And there is too much money in college sports, but the way you take it out is you put it into scholarships for the other kids.
Yeah, that's a great point too, because there's so much money in sports. They're making profits off of these kids and their talents, and they're not putting it back into the rest of the student body. That is very much unlike these athletes that in many cases are getting full ride scholarships and are absolutely working hard and are putting in tons of efforts both on the field and in the classroom at these colleges and universities. What's not happening is that profit's not going back to the other students who then are working just as hard in the classroom but are then struggling for most of or all of their life to pay off those debts despite there being money thrown in droves to these athletics programs. We're joined by ML Elrick, longtime Detroit journalist and candidate for city council in the city of Detroit. Just another couple minutes with you, ML. Is there anything else that you would like to say about your candidacy for Detroit or your podcast, the Soul of Detroit podcast, and where can people find more information on both?
Sure. So we're coming up on the primary on Tuesday. So our campaign is either going to get another shot in the arm and continue or be done. In Detroit, campaigns and races are nonpartisan. So the top two highest vote getters advance to the general election. If folks would like to get involved, volunteer, donate, whatever, please visit our website. It's ml4detroit.com. And on the issue of flooding, I just want to say this affects all of us. The Great Lakes Water Authority serves 4.3 million people in southeastern Michigan. So everybody who's watching us should be concerned about the quality of that system and that you could be the next flood victim. So we are trying to bring our call to action to the Great Lakes Water Authority and get their attention. We have a petition at change.org, and if you search for Detroit flooding, you will find the petition. I'd appreciate if anybody who's concerned that they may be the next flood victim, review some of our proposals and sign on to that petition so that when we talk to the water officials, they know that there are people behind us. They know that there are people all over southeastern Michigan who want this system to be as good as we're paying for it to be, and that there is accountability if you don't do your job. The reason I'm running for Detroit City Council is because I'm sick of just chasing dirty politicians around. I want to sit next to them, and I want to have eyes on them, and I want them to know that if they think they're going to get away with it because nobody's watching, I'm watching. And I'm not watching from the parking lot, and I'm not watching from the gallery. I'm in the chair right next to you. And if you try and pull any funny business, I will be the first person to call you out. And I will do it as loudly as I can, because the conspiracy of silence is over. It's about public service, not self-service. And if you've forgotten that, I will continue to let the world know that you do not deserve the job you have and that you have betrayed the oath you've taken to serve.
ML, appreciate you taking the time to be with us today. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.